How are you?
I'm all right. I'm, life ups and downs, lessons learned. Watch the
Good.
world.
As long as the lessons are learned.
Yeah. Does it matter at what speed you learn them, or?
No.
Oh, okay.
Just as long as you get it all in before you're 40.
Okay. Yeah. What's the indicator for that? That you got it
You'll
all in?
know.
Mm.
It's because when you reach 40, you stop asking questions and start giving answers.
Yeah. Well,
who's on the line today?
For now, it's just me. Dana may call in if he's available, but I don't think he's around right now. So
what you doing?
Me, I just did, my chores and stuff like that, laundry. Now I have a couple hours before I got to go to bed. I figured I'd give you a call.
Yeah.
See what's going on with you. Your life's so exciting. You always got something going on.
Well, we're still in snow. It snowed again today. We had a day and a half or something of warm weather where the temperature went 10 degrees above zero, and immediately, following about 30 hours, it dropped back down to 10 below. So.
I know, like my brother lives in Colorado over there, and there was a blizzard. And it's strange that I guess it's a blizzard there, and over here there's no snow. It's almost like it's spring. It's still a little cold, but when I was working the other day, I had to turn on the AC in the truck because it was so warm.
Here, the 10-day forecast is that tomorrow night is the last. Yes, sir, you disappeared.
Yeah, you was. It just. I think it was your end because it just.
Yeah.
It just.
Because I was trying to tell you that the double digits end tomorrow night as far as below zero.
Mm-hmm.
So the next days after is all down to single digit below zero at night.
So that's a good sign. I mean, for us, it's going to be all in the mid 40s. To 50 degrees. So I guess that's. I forget. What's the official day of spring?
21st.
March 21st. Oh, that's right around the corner.
Yeah. 21st. Sometimes they say it's a little earlier. It gets to 20th or 22nd by an hour or whatever, but basically it's 21st.
So, what have you been seeing? Have you noticed anything that maybe I didn't notice that's been going on around the world?
Well, there's a lot of water all over the place.
Yeah.
And a surplus of water at this time would be more than harmful, since it's got no place to go but pass it on. And in the sports world, there appears to be a period in time where things are preventing the expected winners of winning, and a new bunch of winners are showing up. I don't know if that means anything, but the word sport is port of entry.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah.
The beginning of something.
Beginning. Well, what I've been seeing, it seems pretty standard, I guess, for what happens in the system. Like, just recently, there was did you hear about the shooting in New Zealand?
Yeah.
And I saw the number 49.
49 existed on purpose until yesterday, where they added one to make it 50.
Yeah. And another thing, with numerology, I saw something. Trump made they were talking about in California. Some, I guess, the mayor or governor there, they took away repealed the death penalty, and Trump made a statement, something about 737 cold killers are let loose or something, or not to be executed. And then I noticed that same number, 737, was had something to do with the Boeing airplane was grounded.
Yeah.
I'm not sure of the exact details. But
it looks like there's a part in the plane itself, some kind of big screw that they found in the wreckage that suggests it was pointed to down instead of up on takeoff. Now, I don't know, because they didn't explain, is this a part of the airplane manufacturing, or did somebody put that screw in there? Now, I also, on another subject, have received a notice from a hydro that they want to cut down my 49 Sitka spruce trees in the front.
What?
That it affects the power lines. And I said to them when they came here, I said, you got your thing backwards. We don't have power. We don't need your power. We're going to go with a supplier of solar power the next time we look for power. So forget our trees. It's move your post. Get your post off our land, and the briars won't be touching our trees. So they sent me a letter by double courier. They sent two guys to deliver it so that it would be certain that I signed the receipt for it, because they can't read my signature when I sign it anyway. So they are still being nasty, and what they don't understand is they've already been tried in absentia at the Pineal Court, and they have been sentenced. Everybody in Hydro's finance department and everybody in Hydro's local agency and everybody who aids and assists them, or aid and abet is what they call it in law, I think.
Mm-hmm.
such as every time they come protected by Ontario Provincial Police. Well, what is going on over there is this week the first trial run of cleansing the paradise and cleansing the planet here has begun. The first thing is cleansing paradise is everyone who are allowed to go to paradise by the nuns of the world, starting with the nuns of India thousands of years ago. Every religious group always has nuns on the pretext that they need women to clean up after their messes. So on the one hand, creation is dumping all the nuns back out of the what Christians, I guess, would call heaven, but they call Christians call it paradise. They call it fifth dimension. Then on the other hand, the first execution of the court were carried out this week when two members of the Canadian Parliament, one a conservative and one a liberal, who had been implicated in my affairs at one time or other, one when I was on Parliament Hill, the other one when Hydro cut off the power and they didn't do anything. And what they're doing is in Antarctica, they are cutting out ice cubes 25 feet across in all directions. And those two politicians, the second one died of a heart attack in Parliament in his office, completely out of normal age of dying. They are being shipped out of Antarctica, each on their own ice cube, taken out to a place in the Antarctic or Indian Ocean area that the flow will take them out into the Pacific Ocean. And the place they arrive at is the area of the plates of the earth that are cleansing themselves. One is high, the other one goes underneath, and everything of that plate is basically taken to the core and destroyed totally. Eventually, maybe millions of years later, some of that material, but none that would basically have made up these two politicians' DNA, will return to the surface of the earth as lava in a volcano someplace in the world, but never again will the combination of DNA that made these two be replicated. So the next batch is more than likely to be Bell Canada and Hydro, and taxation in Canada, Revenue Canada, and refugees and border guards. I don't know in which order, but they apparently, Hydro is to be treated, all the people from Hydro are to be treated as they treat trees who carry the Dutch elm disease. And what they always do is they find these elms that were in the past used along sidewalks on streets and have developed this Dutch elm disease. There is no cure, so they're cut down by these people who are hired by municipalities. Well, they will be treated, people who work for Hydro in finance or who are actually doing work in Kempville and district around here, they will be treated as if they have a disease that must be destroyed and never allowed to affect anything else again. So each one of them separately, when found guilty by creation in the court, will be put on a block of ice and sent to the Pacific Ocean. If they got their numbers right, the 25-foot cube will take them there just in time to have melted underneath their feet, and at one stage of the game, there's no more ice, and they just sink to the bottom.
Would this be happening are they physically alive?
Yeah, what happens, I'm told, and I have been shown certain things that make me believe, is that while they are being tried, they have had their DNA renewed so they can be looked at by the audience.
Oh.
And therefore, when they're found guilty, they go to the ice cube in that condition.
Is this like a process that takes years, or is it like?
I don't think it takes years. It's something like a storm generated out of the Indian Ocean. Might take a week or two to get to the Pacific and start running up.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know the exact time that this will happen, but the combination of hitting warmer and warmer water will eventually remove anything to stand on.
And this judgment, I heard you mention in Absentia?
Yeah, the trial was in Absentia.
Absentia, yeah.
That means they normally, what they do is God has done using them and wants to destroy them. And the destruction is usually war, pestilence, famine, and disease. And when creation doesn't want it to happen, creation can stop it. But in their case, they choose not to stop it and let them go through the process. The most likely disease is Alzheimer's. they lose control of their brain.
And while they lose control, they're being on trial or?
Yeah, they testify against themselves in a manner. They're not speaking, they're just there in front of a screen that recalls from their pineal gland and plays on the screen the things they did to others, especially to seniors who they wanted to steal property from.
So you're not the only one that they're trying to steal property from.
60,000 places in, I think it's 2017, in Ontario alone, had their power cut off.
Now, the reason that, your situation, it always seems to be like a unique situation, but you think the property that they're on has some importance, or is it?
Yeah, well, they built this house. Okay?
Yeah.
I found the tag under the house. They built the house, and the telephone post they have out in front at the entrance to the driveway there is designed to surcharge this piece of land around here. I don't know how expansive that area would be, because you'd have to have the instruments to walk around to find out the limits. But we know that in the house across the street and in this house, 2 babies were born, boys, with mentally handicapped situations. So the power supply appears to be designed to test how this surcharge of electricity, electromagnetism in the magnetic field, affects people who live in that area. So it's useless to think about just allowing them to put hydro back in, even if a new house is built. That doesn't solve the problem. It means that the solution is to get rid of hydro, who have a power supply that comes on 3 rather than 2 wires and ends at this property. It ends basically on the house next door further south, but that used to be a part of this property 40-some years ago, and they brought the power to that spot there. And they also have had a boy that has mental problems.
Because of the magnetism, right?
Yeah. For some reason or other, this test is aimed at destroying men, boys, rather than men and women. Because the men who have lived here have either been born handicapped or have died before their time, while the women have lasted a much longer period of time. So we got to get them off the property. And, of course, they are protected by the police, and therefore every one of those policemen is charged with aiding and abetting genocide. Right now, murder, when they're talking about Tom Byberg, they completed a process of old age after he arrived here on Tom, and completed it through the surgeons and nurses at the hospital. Then you have the attempted murder of Jennifer, who was pulled off the property by the OPP and dumped in New York State 4 times before, on the 5th time, being flown to California. And, of course, me. But I seem to be resistant in the context of the brain. My problems have been more with hernia and with my feet. Two areas, one on each foot, on the outside of the foot, have developed what, if left unchecked, would have been cancer. And I can feel it when they're trying to do it, and it happens during the night, and I can feel it in my feet while I'm trying to sleep, and woken up by the concentration that my brain is on my feet, and I can feel the activity they're trying to do there. But because I screwed up their system by pulling out some of the rocks underneath and changing the water flow from being brought down on purpose, now it only floods when there's a real surplus of water 2 or 3 times a year.
So when that happens, what do you just stay outside of the house, or?
No, I have the advantage of being married to a nurse. And when I speak to her on the telephone and explain to her what's going on, she directs me to what to look for in the way of medicine that will fight what's going on. Now that I know, I didn't know when the hernia problem occurred. I was sleeping in the basement. But the foot problem, I'm not sleeping in the basement because most of the time it's flooded. And I've changed things down there underneath the basement floor, so I don't know what effect what I've done has done, but it seems to have cut back on its ability to be as powerful as it used to be. You never kind of get rid of it completely, but at least I'm still alive.
Yeah. That's a big plus.
Yeah.
Well, I remember you said a while ago, said it's one thing to know that, a politician or whatever is a crook, and that there's corruption. But it's another thing to know exactly how the system functions and what it does to attack you on all ends. So I wanted...
Politicians by themselves can't do anything. Like creation, they could stop things from being done, but what they do is they turn over control of this mechanism to bureaucrats. And the leadership of the bureaucracy is the deputy minister.
Mm-hmm.
And an agency like Hydro or Bell or what have you have their own system, but it's the bureaucrats in finance within those organizations that are out to set up the theft from seniors. You know, if you send a bill that is ridiculous, like $19,000 when your monthly payments were under $200, and then they don't pursue you, but they shut your power off. You're supposed to be visited by the police who say, you can't live like this. Come with us, we will take you to town and introduce you to the agencies that can help pay the bill. And what they're talking about is agencies who have been donated money by people who want to help the poor. But in fact, if you accept their money and give it to Hydro, you're just acting as the middleman in their fraud. So you cannot, if you've got any integrity whatsoever, accept funding from United Appeal, for example, which is the biggest one they use. United Appeal is given money by people off their salaries and mostly government workers will say, $10 a month or $50 a month or $100 a month, whatever. But when you look at the total number of people in the civil service, it's millions and millions of dollars given to help the poor, not to help Hydro steal. But the police aid and abet the fraud by protecting the people from Hydro when they come to your property and act as if they own it, and that you have nothing to say in the matter if they want to do something like cut your trees down or shut your power off. The law, from what I understand now, says that it's illegal for them to cut off the power totally. They're supposed to leave a meter on the line that allows something like 15% of the norm so that your plumbing will at least allow you to go to the toilet, or that you can turn on a hot plate, one burner at a time, so you can eat. But they don't do it. And the police know it, and they don't do anything about it. So all of those people who are in line by sending bills to make it appear as if money is owed to them, and the taxation department of the federal government does that all the time, along with hydro, and if there were water taxes, if you're living in a municipality, you also have to pay things like water taxes, so that would involve the municipality. All those people are conspiring together so that if you end up where you can be made to be alone, they can send bills before you're dead, and as soon as you die, well, you're not there to say that's not true anymore. And the bills are sent to lawyers who basically put a lien on the property, sell it to their buddies, but take, $19,000 off the top and give it to Hydro. And this is happening thousands of times every year in a place like Ontario. As much as 60,000 places have had power shut off. They're not all homes. Some could have been businesses and stuff.
But that's what I was saying. Like, I want to, maybe, if it's possible, we could maybe create a documentary or some way of documenting all of this stuff of how the system does this.
Yeah.
And producing.
That's why you're there, and I'm here. I can't do it because I don't have the equipment, but I can speak it, and then you could broadcast it, or write a book or whatever.
Yeah, I want to broadcast it, and maybe make a documentary and just put it out there so people can visualize this stuff.
Yeah.
And see it. Because, if there's people out there looking for answers and they're not getting all the answers.
The media is in on it, and the media sets it up in a manner that the people who are going through this are covered in a story if they accept the money to pay the bill. But they don't report on anybody who refuses to accept the money so that the fraud can't go on, at least while you're alive.
What's going on with the Prime Minister up there? Last I heard, when I looked at it, it wasn't looking very good for him.
No, he certainly does not look like he's happy at work or at home. Somebody remarked the other day, I think it was a guy in Moosonee. No, it wasn't him. It was somebody else. That I think it was a taxi driver. And you don't see him with his wife anymore. So whatever is happening is affecting his home life as well. And we don't know everything that is happening.
Well, I saw that I've only seen a video of him and his wife one time, but in the video it looked like his wife, like she was controlling. She looked like the type of lady that would be cheating on him behind his back, and he couldn't do anything about it. Like, it seemed like she was just had total control. That's what it looked like. What do I know?
From what I remember, and I'm not 100% certain, but I think she's an actress.
It's a role?
That's a world I accept.
So what do you think when you look at all that you know, and you look at him and his situation and how he's basically being set up? How do you feel about that situation? Is it
how much is of his own doing, and how much is done by his staff on purpose is something we are not sharing. We are not being given, I should say, the information that is required to know for certain. All I know is that he is being photographed looking like a beaten man, looking like a man who has lost his ability to defend himself.
He's being possibly destroyed from within. That's the usual MO, right? They set it up in a way where you can't do anything. You just, I guess they want him to just put his head down and accept his defeat or whatever.
Well, there seems to be a group of women that the cell calls women instead of women that are managing all of this.
Yeah.
And that it goes back to native androgynous in what's the word?
Hermaphrodite?
Amen. Hermaphrodite would be the end product of what they're looking for. But they are related back to this woman who was the Minister of Justice and native. What they would normally call indigenous now, so that the word always relates back to Indian, which in fact means India. And they seem to be on a track that begins by getting rid of men, especially men like Trudeau with power, and eventually, once they've accomplished that part, then they'll get rid of all normal women.
I thought getting rid of women was what they were doing first.
They are getting rid of women in the context that they are transforming many women into we men. Women who may have been born as women, but have found out over time that women in the sense of mothers living in the home, raising a family, don't have power. And if they accept the role of becoming women who act like men, then they gain power that they would never have otherwise. But they're still born as women, whereas the men seem to be the targets of Hydro finance department, which are mostly women. And they use the men to kill men in the same way as the women are used to destroy women, leaving them with power over lesbians, gays, and all of the other groups.
Variations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, it would not surprise me one bit that this woman who was Minister of Justice doesn't run to replace Trudeau. Would not surprise me. I think that's the intent the women have. That's either if he is so distraught that he decides to quit, or that along the way he commits an act of suicide or murder by political concerns.
Now, this deputy minister, you said this is the person that will be the head of the bureaucracy. What's the conversion in the U.S.? Would it be the deputy attorney general?
Probably. You got to remember that the power structure in Canada suggests that a minister is more powerful in Canada than in the U.S. because in the U.S. they are called secretaries.
Mm-hmm.
And a secretary normally does the work for a minister.
The word secretary has the word secret. Like they have a secret or they know a secret, and it has Aries.
They have no personal power, but they are powerful due to their closeness, contact with the minister. But it's not their own power. So the U.S. suggests that they're not acting for the U.S. They are working for somebody, following instructions, but in fact using the power for their own purposes.
Yeah. Well, I've been seeing, as the whole thing with, the investigation and the president, but out of that came, that investigation, a lot of things have come to the surface. And I suspect that he's involved in the exposing possibly of that whole thing with the did you hear about the university? It's like a scam.
Yeah.
in the universities. I believe, I suspect it's the reason why it's coming out now is just all part of that whole process of getting rid of this.
Who is being targeted are the breadwinners, the men of rich families whose child does not merit access to universities based on their abilities, but more on the fact that the wife of the family puts pressure on the male to get the child into universities that they can brag about. So at the same time, what you're doing is you're giving power to women, you're taking power away from men, especially once you make it public like the media has, and you keep pointing to the men whose contract exists signed by them with this group of people who were fraudulently enrolling people under circumstances that would be considered unethical in any sense of the word.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've been looking at that and these people who now it's coming out, it's just unraveling more and more how these people in this bureaucracy, how they manipulate it for their benefit, and how they.
No.
It's for me. It's showing me how it functions, how these people can do what they do.
Well, you can't watch anything on TV or see anything on your telephone, whether it's sport or art or whatever, without the speakers changing the discussion to this golfer has a contract for his children to cheat, or this actor or this people with money, and they keep pointing them out rather than discussing what the people earn their money doing. They talk about they're cheaters. And that has only begun since the media figured out it was one way to advance the cause again. And that over the last 20 years at least, what used to be all men media, especially in news, has changed to be mostly women.
Yeah.
And from women have become mostly women. In politics, you have the same thing. And the only men that seem to be given a free pass in all of this wear turbans. We have in Canada now many leaders of political parties who have turbans. And they come from India, and they are Sikhs.
Oh. They have a lot of power, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, they destroyed Trudeau on his trip to India. They made him look like an idiot. India, although never thought about it in this context by most people because it's not covered in the media, India is the most powerful country behind all of the activity that goes on under the guise of Caucasians.
Yeah.
Starting with Britain and the political parties in England are basically named after the ruse that is called politics, because they are Labour and Tories, and that makes laboratories. Which means their controlling interests were when they traveled to India and pretended, the English pretended to be in charge of India, where in fact they were just being trained by Hindus, most likely Sikhs, to do their bidding and take the consequences along with the bidding.
Yeah, that's the story. That's the mainstream general knowledge is that the Britain went over there and they colonized them, and somehow they are like basically the villains, and the Indians are like the victims or something.
India stole the power out of Africa.
Yep.
But didn't want to appear to be the thief. So they had to manufacture Asians and Caucasians who would then do the actual work under the guise of being colonialists. But the end product is the gold flows into India.
India.
Everybody in India, no matter how poor they are, want to have something gold. And if you get married and you got money, you better have gold.
You know, when they talk about the beginning of human beings, like in the allegory of the Jungle Book, the characters are Indian.
Yeah.
Mowgli. And
Indians are Indians no matter where they live. Even though the turban is replaced with feathers in the West.
Birdman.
Still the same thing. If you look at the profile of an Indian with a feather stuck up behind his head, it looks exactly like a closed fist with the index finger stuck up.
Index finger. It's
Number
pointing.
one.
Number one?
Number one is always in hiding. Number 2 is number 1 in most people's vision of things. The presidents are basically cosmetic, and the guy who runs the show is number 2. Vice president is in charge of vice. Can't be more simple than that.
Think about that word, free.
It's the word resident with a P in front.
Yeah.
He's the resident that takes the blame.
Yeah. That's all the presidents that we've seen, at least in the U.S. They're always that's part of the job. That you take the blame for everything, even if it's not your fault.
Yeah.
They just take the blame.
Yeah, and they'll come up with the saying, "The buck stops here."
The buck stops here. I think about these words that we use. Why do we use them? Like, how we have the word daughter and son, and I was thinking about the word son. Like, why would they name boys sons? Why does it sound the same as the star?
He's bright. He's bright and he can work in physics, while the daughter is linked to a dot. A dot is a period.
Oh, shit. Period.
It's all phonetics.
Yeah. And periods, they finalize. It's like a final. Like when you put a period at an end, it's symbolically supposed to be like that's it. It stops here.
Flushing out any possibility this month.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with forever, but if you do it 1 month at a time, you can reach all the time. Women are the hardest workers, and they get all the blame in the end by women. Women tell them, you're stupid doing what you do, without realizing that what women do, keeping a place clean, and that has benefits for a certain group of people who, through religion, control them. So you got a group like Seventh-day Adventists who will look around all over for young girls, 16, 17 to 20 years old, who are not living at home and don't have a family, and they converge upon that person and say, come with us, we will give you what you need, and that's protection through a place to stay, a job to do, and then they send them out to work as janitors, cleaning buildings at night, walking around, and too young to know what it's all about. But part of it is to let the bosses in who can then check the trash and the papers on the desks of people in any company or government department or whatever, and copy stuff and send it to central command of the women. Seventh-day Adventists. They clean on Sundays while everybody else is in church.
My aunt was Seventh-day Adventist. That's the religion in I don't know what other country, but I know in Haiti it's pretty popular.
Yeah.
That and Catholic, can never say it right. Catholicism.
Yeah.
And voodoo. Those are the three religions that I'm familiar with over there.
And they all have a common purpose.
Yeah.
Just attack the problem from a different direction. Make the poorest ones go towards Seventh-day Adventists. Make the wealthiest ones go towards Catholic Church, or their protesters called Protestants.
I think the Seventh-day Adventists, part of their thing is they don't, I think on Saturdays or Sundays, I'm not sure which day, they don't do anything. They don't, like, I remember my aunt, I think it was Sunday or Saturday, she wouldn't cook or anything. It's supposed to be, like, I guess their rest day or something, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, everybody has their rest day, whether it's Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. And it depends on the need, and it depends on what religion is in charge and who they can call upon on what day to go to a company or a government office or whatever and sneak out with the data that they can feed into their main computers. Eventually, they own all the information because all the people who wrote the originals die off, but the computer never dies.
Never does.
Especially if it's underground and well hidden from everybody else having access. And the only people who know are Mother Superiors of the nuns of the world.
And that knowledge they have, it makes them very dangerous.
Well, imagine if you knew everything that is true. And you're the only one who knows everything that's true. You can use it to mislead people away from truth.
Yeah.
And you tell them buy stocks without telling them that you own the biggest majority of stocks they're going to buy, so they're going to buy them from you. And then you're dependent upon them to allow you to benefit from having bought the stock at their expense, at the controller's expense. They pay out money, mostly to the people they control. And they can stop it the minute they don't want them to be billionaires. They want to keep all the money that is considered capital while only spending what is considered interest. And their capital keeps growing and growing and growing all at the expense of the poor people who got suckered in. Life is not a dream.
That's what they told
us. It's a nightmare.
It is. Well, a nightmare is a dream, so technically it's an unfavorable dream. Not in your favor. So, yeah. So, I guess all I can do is observe, analyze, conclude, Glenn. I'm just looking. I don't have, I have questions about certain things in the system. I don't have all the answers.
You can't have all the answers. They're in the moho discontinuity.
Yeah.
At the mantle of the earth, below the plate, above the core, nobody invited but a special few. You always can imagine that some of the worst people who ever lived end up in the moho discontinuity. When everybody is told by the media that they're dead, but their DNA is too important to leave behind. So guys like Hitler, for example, although he's a public one, the others, like people who are described as Hitlers, they kind of just disappear off the surface of the earth, and they end up in the moho discontinuity while people think they died. How long they keep them until they dissect them so that they can make more people like them is a good question. Scrapings of the mouth and feet, along with foreskin of men, are basically what coroners do before they allow a body to be buried or burned. And that DNA goes into a database, data bank, and can be used to manufacture the person. The only way to get rid of that person totally is to send them the same place the planet sends plates of the earth, and that's to the core. That's what religion used to describe hell. They didn't just make it up. They looked at the earth and they said, hey, what happens when you're totally destroyed is you go to hell. So hell is simply the core of the earth.
Hell is the core of the earth. Moho is
above it.
Is the way to hell.
It's called purgatory.
Yeah.
Purge a Tory. Cleanse the body of what you need.
Do you think, like these people long ago when they learned what this moho was? You think they used that material, the DNA, or?
Yeah, but they are all men who did it and said to the women, put this in the file. Well, you know what happened?
Yeah.
There's a group of women called Amazons, and they describe how you keep information that a person has from being used without permission. And the information that a person has is in their mammary. So they cut off the mammary. They cut off the breast, claiming that it was to help them fight better by shooting arrows. In fact, what it is to prevent the mammary from passing on memory to the child or man who happens to be attracted. You don't have them, you can't pass the information out. The only place you get history on the surface of the planet is through the mammary. While a child is being fed so the body can grow with breast milk, its head is in an electromagnetic cloud that acts just like any wireless speaker, and the information contained therein turns on switches in the child's system. And out of the millions and millions of switches that are possible, only a few get turned on as a child is breastfed. And most of the important switches don't get turned off until you are an adult and come in contact with the mammary. And that's how art is passed, for example. That's how science is passed on. So the information that is contained in the mainframe computer in the Moho discontinuity is being tapped by the information passed on through the breast. But unless you have access to more than one, you'll never have anywhere close to the total amount of information that is in the computer, only in the section in which you are utilized as a worker. But if you want to do things such as art, then something has got to allow the switches that open up the roadway within your brain to make that possible. I could never figure out as a young person and almost into my old age how an artist who does paintings, for example, How does that artist know where and how to make the first mark on a blank sheet?
That's something that's just like an internal thing.
Yeah, it's a switch that they have open that you don't have if you're not an artist. But you can have it at a later date if you have access to the areola of many women. And you'll notice that many people who have had careers in public turn to painting once they retire, because art is the closest thing to power that they can have, since they no longer have the powerful job. At least what they have is access to memory that other people don't have. And as soon as they put their art on display, a rich person buys it and it disappears. And it disappears because anybody with a functioning brain who is viewing that art for the first time would know what it refers to in the codes they have in their own head. They couldn't have produced it themselves, but they can read it. Therefore, religious organizations run around the world buy all of the paintings and pottery, sculptures that they can, because they don't want others to see it until it's time. If they reach a point where it's time for the masses to see something, then they notify their media, and the media displays it, such as you have with paintings of the Mona Lisa. What is the Mona Lisa's secret?
She's a man.
She's a male, female.
Yeah.
Painted by the same artist who painted her picture. You have the outline of a male over female, or vice versa.
I suspect that Victoria's Secret is probably the same thing.
Yeah. Victoria's Secret is all related to the bra. 2-in-1. In Canada, it's the $2 coin. 2-in-1. Male, female, being neither male nor female. And, as you said before, hermaphrodite. But there's a journey between male and female and hermaphrodite that is filled in by the usefulness of lesbians or gays, because they made the law such that what they did was illegal, and therefore they had to seek protection. And what better place to seek protection if you're a male than a priesthood, or a female None.
In the workshop, it's mentioned that I guess the gays and lesbians, they were being used by another group within the church, like
Absolutely.
And they kind of
Mother Superior on one hand, Pope on the other, or Archbishop of Canterbury. They know a lot more than all of their followers because they are filled in once they reach that position. And don't forget, the word superior is linked to the word soup. They brew soup. The people that they make artificially have been brewed, which is basically big cauldron making soup. And when you look at Lake Superior, rushing past its banks and heading down until it reaches the ocean, as it crosses everything, it picks up all kinds of minerals and fish. The French word for soup in the Bible is potage. Comes from a pot, and it's aged. It's a fish soup that drowns people who are flooded by a broken dam.
Is that linked to the Mesopotamia?
Yeah.
Meso.
It's a mess. Why does the military call the eating place a mess?
Yeah. And it's got all these people jumbled up in this area.
Yeah.
Oh.
The superior mess is the Lou at the Sioux. What it wants to kill more than anything else is the people's enemies whose job has now expired. So it's their own boss that wants to kill them. And all the controllers, 10,000 years after the project began, have expired dates stamped on them. And that means bureaucrats, policemen, doctors, nurses, border guards, all of those people that have no means by which to defend themselves can be wiped off the earth and the project move to its next phase. which is leaving the residence of all human beings to date on Earth to survive if they can, while the controllers open up new places to live in outer space. Everything you see about NASA has two purposes. One, to excite the people who think they will benefit from it. The other is the reality that those people's time has expired and a new place has to be evolved, controlled by the military, and then released to live its own 10,000 years. And each one of those planets that appear to be like Earth that could hold a population will be used to start over again, just like the Ice Age allowed the world to start over. And depopulation of the Earth is not something that they just invented at the Ice Age. They just remembered how to do it at the Ice Age. You shut down the system on the surface of the planet for the better part of 20,000 years. You cleanse it, and then you start over again, you with the knowledge, them without. And from what I understand, this has occurred 6 times. So we're talking about a period of time, at least 150,000 years. Start a project, you shut it down once you've learned the lessons. You file away the knowledge and say, next time I need to verify whether what I think I know is true, or is it just imagination? A theory is true. It's tested, while mental thought is just a belief that it might be true. Yeah, so you got to do it with different groups, one after the other, and each time you are able to be more specific about what is true and what may be true and what is not true. And you got to work on the maybe truths in the next laboratory. And the things you need to know are the things you don't know you don't know. It's easier to work on the things you know that you don't know than it is to work on things you don't know about. So how can you be trying to figure out how to find that out? You can only do it by following the process of one laboratory follows the other.
Yeah, you got go from beginning to end, and cover to cover, encyclopedia, cover to cover.
Yeah. And you do it by giving prizes to the people who verify what you believed to be true but weren't sure.
Yeah.
Nobel Prizes.
Noble.
British Empire Loyalist, Nobel. Number 2 is number 1, on Bell.
And the British Empire Loyalists, they're all over the world, right? I mean,
they created the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
On behalf of India. I mean, you can't hide the fact that India didn't start the world. The world started in Africa.
Yeah.
But if you want to be different from Africans, you change the color. And you make it brown. Instead of gray nuns, you have Franciscans who walk around dressed in brown.
Yeah, well, you could see, like, in history that the movement of this system, technically it came out of Africa, but the ball started rolling out of India.
Yeah.
And then India, you have Egypt.
And all the people who called themselves indigenous today don't realize that the word comes from India.
The Indians, they're really sneaky in that way. They like to kind of be behind.
Number 2 is number 1 because number 1 is in hiding.
Yeah.
Don't forget when you look at the Royal Bank and you see rats, bats, cats, and lions, you're looking and saying, but what came before rats? Rats are the explorers. They're not the originators. Who was the originator?
The ant.
Go back to the beginning, and it's an ant.
Yeah. India.
Ants go around collecting stuff and bringing it to the queen.
So who's the queen? Amazonian.
Yeah. Don't forget who won the Academy Award.
I didn't see that one. I missed it. Who won that one?
It was a singing group called Queen.
Oh yeah. They made a movie.
Yeah.
They were like, actually, the group was from the 80s, I think it was, and then they made a movie based on that.
Yeah.
Queen. QU.
Yeah.
Double E. That's a really
just
cool.
Like Quebec.
Yep, Quebec. QUE. Q. And
Montreal, a real mountain.
Yeah.
What's hidden inside the mountain comes out in the big cathedral on the surface of the mountain. Usually the mountains aren't that big, so the hills are Capitol Hill, Parliament Hill. And where I was born, Sandy Hill.
Yeah.
DNA Hill, sand.
Wow, it's pretty late, Glenn.
Yeah, time for bed.
It was good talking to you. I will
Say
call
hi
you.
to everybody and pass the word on.
Absolutely.
Bye for now.
All right. Good night, Glenn.
Night.
What?